everybody. Michael St. John from Memphis Wrestling back in the day, and I am thrilled to death to be with these great folks on Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
Hey, this is Jimmy Street, host of the Live and in Color with Wolfie D podcast. Hear the life and times of professional wrestler Wolfie D. From his time in the territories with PG-13 to his time in WWE, ECW, WCW, TNA, and more. Nothing is off limits and nothing will be held back. Thanks again for tuning in. Here he is, Wolfie D.
Welcome once again to Live and in Color with Wolfie D and my man Jimmy across the street. Man, thank God the general public. Has anybody checked on Jim Cornette? I mean, we're not going to go there because I've heard that people say, you know, they don't listen to him because of that kind of stuff of politics or whatever. But whatever. I'm happy. I just want to make sure he's okay. There's a couple. Derek King, I haven't heard from him in a few days. Because a few days before the election, he was adamant that it was going to go the other way. But I'm so glad that the general public is not as dumb as I thought they were. So I'm just going to lead with that. I mean, can I go with that?
Yeah, and like that song you shared on Facebook the other night of Landslide will bring you back.
Yes, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
That was funny.
What's going on with you, man?
Not much, brother. Just living, doing podcasts nonstop like a crazy man. But man, we're you know.
And I saw you had little Eagle, little Farmer John was on there, and so I'm like, dang. Jimmy's keeping all the good guys for himself now.
That is not what other people think, but we'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
It was an opportunity.
Yeah, little Farmer John was awesome. He was a part of my story too, you know.
I mean, dude, we can bring him on anytime. He's awesome, and it would be a great show on our show too, man. The reason being, I'll be honest with you, this is a totally Mark moment, okay? But we are trying to do all of those unbeatable trading card guys, okay? That's kind of our goal on my show. So like your Dante Mephistos, we've had them. Your Billy Montanas, we've had him. Roger now, so that, and we need Wolfie eventually, but we've done so much on our show, it's kind of hard to make time for that show. But anyway, that's the point. We want all the unbeatable trading card guys, and we're trying, but Roger was just one of those. So, and great interview, but I would love to interview him on this show too, because like you said, he has great history with you. So
yeah, and I'll bury him. I'll say stuff that you won't. So
yeah, fair enough. You're right.
Always will, man. Man, the Danny Davis show.
Yeah.
How great was that?
Bro, huge.
And I know we've talked about it now for 2 weeks, but how great was that?
So obviously we are wishing well for Dutch, Dutch Mantell. If you can help him, support him with the GoFundMe.
Yes.
But I do feel like it's been like a perfect storm somewhat with the Dutch show going into hiatus, hopefully temporarily for Dutch,
Yeah.
But I feel like that has kind of piqued a little bit of interest in our show. I've noticed a lot of new listeners. Thank you all for coming on, for sure.
Yes,
we're not trying to take advantage of Dutch's loss here, but if you need to listen to somebody, it should be Wolfie D, right? Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, man, seriously, like, I've said my things about Dutch and what I think and all this kind of stuff. And man, I love him to death. He gave me opportunities, and I also have the little issue in Puerto Rico or whatever, but I love Dutch. Whether he loves it or not, I don't know. But yeah, man, I mean, when it comes down to your health and your life and everything like that, man, y'all go help Dutch, man. He's got a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
And it's raised a lot of money. I saw that yesterday. I think it was like $67,000 it was up to.
Yeah.
And one of the names I noticed just out of the blue, George Weingroff actually sent it to me. It was like, hey, look at this. And Tony Khan I don't know if that was a fake name or not, but $5,000 from Tony Khan. And I know, Jericho's one guy that always helps out the guys, and I'm sure he's probably in on that. And probably Taker, because Dutch and Taker was, good friends and stuff. So who knows? $67,000, and I'm sure he's grateful and his family's grateful, and that's awesome. I hate that, it's like a twofold here. His wife and him are both going through some terrible health issues, so they need some help. And if you can, help them out.
Yeah. Seriously, if you can. And I'll be honest, bro, this is probably the worst thing I could ever admit, but I go on those GoFundMes to see who the top guys that give are. Yeah. And I noticed Tony Khan gave $5,000, which is awesome. That's pocket change to him. But Jim Cornette also gave $5,000 too. Oh, yeah. That's awesome. And of course, Jericho's always on there giving something. And so if you have $5 or 50 or 10 or whatever, and you don't, if you got a reason to give it to Dutch right now, he for sure could use it. And
absolutely, man. I mean, a lot of times, especially nowadays, you look at GoFundMe and like everybody's doing a GoFundMe, but this is like a serious deal, man. He's not in good shape. His wife's not in good shape, and his daughter is trying to take care of them. And like I know them all personally, and so I know some things on a different level that. Through messages, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like things that aren't out there. So, yeah, man, help them out.
Yeah, help them out if you can. Obviously, I know we had a recent loss that really has affected you as far as, somebody that meant a lot to you.
That's another one, man.
Yeah.
Slacker J, man. Dustin Phillips trained him, and then also his girlfriend, man, Roxanne, who was our valet in TNA. She passed away in 2019, and I honestly believe that he probably didn't get over that. And a nice way of saying it is that he just didn't get over it. You know what I mean? I don't know what happened. But it sucks, man. It sucks.
It does, man.
But man, I'm not the big religious guy or whatever, but wherever the world takes you when you're done, I hope they're together. Slacker was a good worker, and he was a good kid, man. And he always reminded me that he dressed up as me. Jamie at Halloween, and like I said, Roxanne was our manager. So I got good ties to them, man. I hate that happened, man. It's terrible, man. I tell you this, I want to say this to the listeners because I've already told you this. At Ric Flair's last match, I came out, got in the battle royal or whatever, and I looked out. And the first person I saw was Foley in the front row. And I was like, hey, Mick. He's like, hey, Wolfie. And then I looked over to my left, and about 5 or 6 rows back was Slacker.
Yeah.
And his eyes were so big and like so happy and just looking at me like, oh, man, he was with it, man. He was with it. And like he felt good for me. And holy shit, man, like, saying that right now just makes me feel so good that I can make somebody feel like that. And he was a good kid, man. He really was. Him and Roxanne, man. I went missing. Here's another story I'll tell. I went missing one time. I don't know if you know this, but I think it was around 2012. I went to his house, hung out with him and Roxanne, and we just had a good evening, is what we'll call that.
Sure.
Hung out, had a good time. And then the next day on the internet, Wolfie D goes missing. It was because of the woman that I was with at the time, if you want to call her that. But anyway, I went missing. So that was like, it was like a headline. Wolfie D goes missing. No, I was just at Slacker Jay's house. But anyway, yeah, man, love that kid and Roxanne too. So
yeah, rest in peace. I know his granddad was John Hartford. If you've listened to the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou movie, he has a song on that. Big time guy in singer-songwriter land of like kind of in the folk scene. But yeah, look up John Hartford. That was his grandfather. We
also got don't mean to interrupt, but yeah, Corey Williams, Hot Chocolate, man. Another good friend of mine I hadn't talked to in a long time. He had a hand in Dustin's training too. So I want to give a shout out to Corey.
Yeah, man, we need to get him on the podcast sometime, brother.
Yeah, I think he's like totally kayfabed.
Well, I don't blame him. Do you blame him, honestly?
Sometimes I can see it. Sometimes I can't. But,
yeah. Yeah, I get it. But yeah, man, rest in peace, Slacker. And I just hate that. The saddest thing is obviously I have my podcast, Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. And we know how this works, Wolfie. So many guys, God love them, they don't ever want to come to you and say, hey, I would like to be on your podcast. So many guys, they'll get somebody else and say, hey, you ought to bring this guy on, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Slacker actually came out and said, hey, Jimmy, I would love to be on your podcast. And that to me, I wanted to get him on ASAP. Unfortunately, I had a whole bunch lined up already, and it didn't happen. I even wanted to ask you to be a co-host on that. You know what I'm saying? Like
a lot of that. You want me to come in and kind of like surprise guests or whatever. Yeah. And honestly, you talked about this the other day. I went back and I looked at some of my messages because my shit gets so backed up, man. I apologize to anybody that messages me and I don't respond. You know what I mean?
Right.
I try to respond to everybody. But anyway, he had sent me a message, and this was like, I think 2022. And he's like, hey, man, I'd love to come on your show. And, I answered him back, but it was not in the context of, okay, let's do it tomorrow.
Right.
It was just like, yeah, man, yeah, we can do that. And then I didn't speak to him again on that platform. But man, what a good kid. He always spoke so highly of me. And
he loved you, man.
Much, much more than I deserve. And God bless him, man. God bless him. Anyway, let's take a turn. Man. And let's go on to, the world's better now. Donald Trump has been elected, but I didn't mean to say that. What I meant to say was we got Michael St. John on today.
I know, man. I'm stoked. A lot of history in the business, and great guy.
And one of the ones that usually I rib you. I'm the call in the ring guy, but I did my research on this one, man. Yeah. I didn't realize that. Michael is a rich guy. This guy's got it going on.
Yeah. I don't know his net
I should have been nicer to him.
But dude is seemingly doing very well, but he also has his own radio station network. I think he should play Live and in Color with Wolfie D on his radio station, but we'll get into that later.
He absolutely should. Yeah, man. He's always on Randy's show, and he's always just been a nice guy and spoke highly of me, man. I can't wait to get him on the phone now. After the research I did, man, I got lots of questions.
Well, let's do it, brother. Let's do it. We'll be right back with Michael St. John after these messages.
Blinds.com is kicking off the savings early with Black Friday mega deals all month long. A Blinds.com design expert can help you make the perfect selection on your schedule. We can even handle everything from measure to your whole home installed for just one low cost. With over 25 million windows covered, Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings. Get up to 45% off site-wide, plus premium doorbusters and a free professional measure. Now at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
So, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write a million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Hey folks, to get your official Live It in Color with Wolfie D merchandise, go to ProWrestlingTees.com/live Wolfie D. Check it out.
If you're listening to Live and in Color with Wolfie D on Apple Podcast and like what you're hearing, go ahead and leave a 5-star rating. And while you're at it, write a review. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you'd like to hear in the future. It's very important to us and always appreciated. Thanks again.
All right, guys. Once again, you survived the commercials. We love it when you survive the commercials and you come back to a very important guest, man, that I didn't know so much stuff about this guy, man. I really feel like he's rich now. I should have asked him at the Hall of Fame for a couple of bucks, because now I feel like he's rich because he owns so much stuff I didn't know he owned. I thought it was just a wrestling thing or whatever, but he owns so much radio stuff. And he's also he's a Hall of Famer more times than me. And damn. Shit, man. I just got inducted to the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. So did he. We're in the same class. But he is also an ABA Hall of Famer, which means Alabama. Am I doing this right? Alabama Broadcasting Association Hall of Fame. I mean, you got that going on too.
100%, man. You got it right on, Wolfie. You always could cut a promo, man.
Well, I'm trying because I did my research, man. And I told Jimmy, I texted him a little while ago and I was like, hey man, I'm a cram test guy. And so I just did this, and he did it like a week ago or something like that. And he's like, yeah, man, I already know, Wolfie. And then, so I'm like, man, I didn't understand that he owned all this stuff. And then I read the thing, and if I can, I'd like to read this, man. This is so cool to me when I read this. Can I please?
Sure.
This is on WAAY 31 ABC. I guess that's in Alabama, where you reside.
That's right, in Huntsville.
Yep. It says, Michael St. John credits the start of his 53-year broadcast career to a spot many North Alabamians drive by on a daily basis. It's possible you have stopped there over the years, though it might not have been for the same reason St. John did. Like most teenagers, St. John got a high school job to pick up a little extra spending cash. At age 15, which is when I got in the wrestling business, and this doesn't correlate, but sort of, you kind of got going at the same age I did with what you wanted to do. He was hired at Bruno's Supermarket, and I also worked at a supermarket when I was 14 because my mom worked there, on the corner of University Drive and Memorial Parkway in Huntsville. I was a sack boy, so was I, for one day, and then they put me behind the cash register. Like any job, the boss eventually added some extra responsibility. Long story short is, you got on the mic, or I mean, I don't know what you call that back then, the mic on the thing. And what was the guy, Michael, that heard you when he was walking through the store?
M.D. Smith III.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then that guy heard you, and also he just invited you into, hey, your voice sounds good.
Well, I think you liked the enthusiasm, because the voice wasn't very good then, and it's still not very good. But I think he liked the enthusiasm, and had me come by, asked me if I ever thought about doing having a job in radio. Yeah. And he came out through my checkout stand through him and his wife, and he said those magic words, and that's all my ears wanted to hear, because that's what I really wanted to do. I was one of those lucky people that knew what I wanted to do very early in life, and by gosh, I was going to do it if it came hell or high water.
Yeah.
And I think by doing that, and he gave me a start, and I went to college a year. I went to college. I was just turned 17 going into Vanderbilt, and I was very young, but he
you
gave
went
me an
to
opportunity.
Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I have a degree in psychology from Vanderbilt, believe it or not.
Wow.
And,
okay. Commodores are doing good, man. They're winning right now.
Hey, we gotta love this because it's going back to after this year. I'm sure it'll go back to winning math tests. But I'm proud of the boys. But anyway, not only did he give me an opportunity to be on the radio, and that was the number one radio station in Huntsville, Alabama, and had been for a long time. So I felt that he really took a risk on me or for me, and allowed me during college to come back on the weekends and work 18 hours and make about $50. And that's the money I lived on when I was in college. And God bless my mama and daddy. They worked hard, and my mama worked at a jewelry store, and my dad worked at the newspaper, the Huntsville Times, for 43 years. And they, for whatever reason, they came up with the money. They sacrificed a lot to get me through college, but I did it in 4 years and did some working to keep, some walking around money in my pocket. And that's sort of how it all started.
That's awesome, man. And then, I mean, like I say, man, and Jimmy's heard me say this, the listeners heard me say this, that, man, I've known you for a long time, but I don't know your history. And it's just so many people that, like, we're so focused, like, when we're, like, anytime I've been around you, what are we focused on? The show that night, Absolutely. I never traveled with you or anything like that, but then I start looking stuff up, and I'm like, holy crap, man, this guy owns the Fun Media Group. I mean, how did that come about?
Well, I was in broadcast radio out of college. I made the rounds. Went to Birmingham to Memphis, Memphis to Hartford back to Nashville for 20 years, and then out west went to Phoenix to Los Angeles to St. Louis, and back in 1996, the station I was working for, sold it to a bigger conglomerate. And I had just signed a 3-year contract with them, and it was called Zimmer Broadcasting. They owned part of Learfield Communications, and I was running their St. Louis property, and the company they sold it to was Emmis Broadcasting out of Indianapolis. And the guy that was president of the station in India, or the company that bought us, the president had been my news director at WTIC-FM in Hartford, Connecticut in 1977. So He came to St. Louis, takes me to dinner, and he says, we're going to swap. We're going to flip the format on the station you're doing. We're going to take the morning show and put it on the big stick on KSHE, the rock station up there. He says, if you want to stay with the company, we'll make a place for you. I can bring you to Indianapolis. You can work out the head office, the home office, or I can buy out your contract. And I said, well, I'm really, my parents are getting elderly, and I'm really thinking about buying a radio station. I've been sort of sneaking around looking at it. And to be honest with you, I'll just, we can do a buyout. Yeah. So we had dinner. We continued to have dinner. And at the end of dinner, he hadn't mentioned any numbers, any figures. And I said to him, Rick, I said, we've talked about the buyout and all, what kind of figures are we talking about? And he said, we're going to buy out your whole contract. And I went, well, that's fine with me. So I was able to find a down payment at that point, and I looked for a radio station east of the Mississippi and south of the Ohio. I wanted to be within driving distance of Mom and Dad, because Dad had AAA bypass surgery, and Mom had developed dementia, and they were getting on up in age. And my sister moved to Florida, so it was imperative that I stay in the neighborhood. We were looking to buy a station up in Carthage, Tennessee. We're within a day of buying it, or put money down to buy it. I got a call on a Thursday from a broker in Atlanta about this station in Arab, Alabama. There are no Arabs in Arab, Alabama. And so, but anyway, that old Pinkerton Bowden song. But it's 28 miles south from where I was born, where I went to high school. And within 5 days, we bought this radio station. Came down on a Friday, looked at it on a Saturday, made an offer on the Sunday. Monday, the guy took the offer, and Tuesday we signed the papers. So it happened that fast. And I've been down here since July 31st of 1997. Never worked harder, never been happier.
That's awesome. We said it together, Jimmy. That is awesome. That's very awesome. Very awesome. So all right. So yeah, you got all this stuff, and obviously this is a wrestling podcast. So what is your history like before that? Like, what's your history with wrestling? I mean, were you, as a kid, did you like wrestling, and how did that evolve and all that?
Well, my Uncle John, my mom's oldest brother, was a wrestling fan, and we used to watch when I was growing up. A little bitty guy when I was 5, 6 years old, like my 5-year-old right now. And when wrestling would come on Saturday, Uncle John would be in front of the TV to watch it. I'd sit on the floor with him and watch wrestling. Well, Huntsville was a unique situation back in the late 50s, early 60s. We didn't have any TV stations of our own in the market. We were either watching Birmingham or Chattanooga or Nashville stations. And a guy came up with an idea of what he called cable TV, which was really just a big old community antenna up on Montesano Mountain. And he ran a cable into homes down in the valley, and you'd get, back then you only had 12 channels on that turn knob on your TV. And you had 2 through 13. Yeah. And on every channel was a different station from a different town. And the stations that were on there included Channel 8 in Nashville, which then became Channel 2. And it was all Nick Gulas territory. It was all the territory. But I could watch wrestling. I could watch the Nashville show in the morning at 11 o'clock. I could watch the Chattanooga show at 4 because it was on at 5 in Chattanooga on Channel 12, but it was an hour difference because we're in the Central Time Zone. So I could watch the Chattanooga show. And then that night on Channel 42 in Birmingham, I could watch live studio wrestling with your commentator, Sterling Brewer. And I was I'd watch these shows every week. And then within a year or so, Huntsville actually got its first TV station. What was one of the first live programs they put on there? Live studio wrestling with Grady Reeves. Nice. From the Channel 19. And see, Nick was running, and he had Memphis too. We had every now and then we'd be able to pick up the Memphis show because Nick would run a tape from over there or something. And so I would see these wrestling shows, but I sort of kind of figured things out because I'd watch the Chattanooga show, and Jackie Fargo would get busted open, and that night in at Channel 42, he wouldn't be wearing a patch. And he'd get busted at 42, and I would see the same basic finish that they ran on Channel 12 at 42. So it piqued my interest. When I went to college, of course, they were running, the first year I was at Vanderbilt, they were running the Hippodrome Arena, which was just literally across the street from this campus. And then they moved to the Fairgrounds, the old women's building, the exposition building at the Fairgrounds. So I'd go out there, and Wednesday night, the boys out of the dorm, let's go to the wrestling matches. And they'd go out there to drink some beer and to heckle people and try to get in a fight. And I'd go out there watching the wrestling matches. So funny, man. That's how I got into it. I was a big fan. I mean, God has blessed me with a good memory, so I can remember a lot of the great talent that Nick had come through there.
That was going to be my next question. Like, who was your favorite wrestlers, like, as a kid?
Well, Jackie and Sonny Fargo, who became Roughhouse Fargo, were incredible showmen, and they were captivating. Anytime Jackie would get on the microphone, you would melt into what he was saying. Len Rossi and Tex Riley, Mario Milano, teaming with Len Rossi, Bearcat Brown, Tojo, of course. Tojo was a heel. He had Mitsuhara. He had great Soto with him. He'd bring these Japanese guys over that work with him. Alex Perez. I remember the Corsicans, Corsica Joe and Corsica Gene. And Corsica Gene was Gypsy Joe. And I remember a lot of that history. I remember when a guy named I can't think of his first name, but his last name was Costello, got shot in Nashville, down on Broadway at a bar. And that made, big.
Who was that, Jimmy? Do you know, Jimmy?
I was almost thinking, was it Lou Costello or?
I don't know. I can't remember his first name, and then he had a guy named Bob Ramstead that got shot down there, and another year or two after that. So there was always, things that tied into it. But I was really, between baseball and wrestling, those were the two sports that I would stop my day and watch.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that answer, man. You said Gypsy Joe. Gypsy Joe was the first professional wrestler that I ever, at 15 years old, got in the ring with, and not as a match, but just as a workout. Yeah. And people ask me who trained me and all this kind of stuff. There's some people that would debate that, but I always throw Gypsy in there as my trainer, because at 15 years old, my stepdad and a guy named Rick Reynolds took me to a place in West Nashville, and we crawl in the ring, and there's Gypsy Joe, and he's telling me what to do and do this and do that. And heck, I got it all like real quick, man. And he liked it. And he was also my third match ever in the wrestling business. And you know what? He never chopped me, not one time. And that's the thing that everybody says about Joe, is his chops and stuff. And I'll never forget, man. I'm telling you, I was 16 at the time and had just turned 16. He backed me in the corner. He said, "Don't worry, brother." And he licked his hands. He licked his fingers. And he forearmed me instead of chopping me. He took care of me. He let me do flying head scissors on him. I remember that match, man, like it was yesterday. And he always took care of me, and I always loved Joe, man. And so, yeah.
I did too. Gypsy, of all the wrestlers that I think get ignored is for what they contributed to the sport. And I'll always call it a sport, by the way, because they're athletes, and don't let anybody ever fool you. They're athletes in this business.
Oh,
and Joe, you got to realize Joe wrestled in 8 decades, and except for Mae Young, he's the only person I ever met that wrestled in 8 different decades.
Yeah,
and a wrestler today that will even be alive in 8 different decades.
Yeah, he was tough as nails, man. And while we're on this subject, this brings me to this. I know you probably weren't there, but the New Jack and Gypsy Joe thing, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, I wasn't there. I saw it. And,
what do you think about that?
I think Jack was pretty fucked up to do something like that, though, but to be honest. But that, and watching it, I will say this for Joe. At his age, and I want to say he was like 78, 79, almost 80 in that match.
Yep.
He never, he got the worst end of it, but he was still tough enough to, walk out or stand up and be helped out. And when you think about it, and that was, that was, if that was done in my son's a police officer in Huntsville, if that was done in the streets, that would be first degree assault.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, I mean, in a wrestling arena, that's, a little bit different. But I think to your point, Wolf, you couldn't have been trained by a better one. And and he was as tough as kingdom come. I remember we coming back from Dallas on the bus one night from the WCW
rode the Dallas
show.
Bus.
Oh my God, yes, many times. and sitting next to Joe and Tojo, and hearing them talk about the quote unquote the old days, I mean, it was like going to college and getting a master's degree.
Yeah.
And Joe, a lot of people didn't know how deep Joe was as a human being. But number one, he was a smart guy, and number two, he was we talked about him being tough, but he knew the business inside and out, and I think anybody that would have the opportunity to share in some of that wisdom and knowledge in and outside of the ring, I think would be blessed in this business.
Yeah, for sure, man. And just, I'm not going to dwell on it, but going back to that, man. Yeah, you're right, man. At his age, to be able to take what he took on that is incredible. And I'll tell everybody this, man. Think about it. Let's just think about the normal person, your 70-year-old grandfather, all right? Pick him up and body slam him. What's going to happen? You're going to have to call the ambulance. And he's going to the ER. So that's what I say about him, man. He's just an incredibly tough dude. And again, it goes back to also ring shape, because at my age right now, at 51, I think if somebody body slammed me, I might have to go to the ER too. But ring shape is a different thing. You can go to the gym all you want, but ring shape is different.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jimmy?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to roll across the ring right now, and I'm going to jump over, and I'm going to hot tag you.
All right, hot tag with Michael St. John. So I've got you've opened up so many doors of conversation, but I think, Wolfie was kind of putting it in the right direction. And I want to kind of pick your brain on this a little bit. So being that you've got the golden voice, and when I met you in person, and I've heard you on Randy's show, and of course on millions of wrestling broadcasts, do you feel like you were, is that just a God-given thing? Is that something you developed over time? Or, tell us a little bit about your voice and how you got to where you are, because it's still a great voice.
Well, you're very kind. When I was a kid and growing up in grade school, I was always that little kid in the back, in the front of the room that was the brainiac. But when it came time for a school play, or it came time that they needed somebody to read a part in the Christmas story, I'd be the first one with my hand up. Mm-hmm. And I never had a fear for a crowd or a microphone. And mm-hmm. I won an oratory contest when I was in the 4th grade. It was the first time I had ever done any public speaking, literally in public, outside of my own school classroom. And I loved it. And as far as the voice goes, I don't think I've got that great of a voice. I have been told I have a unique voice, which is a blessing from God. But I didn't do anything in particular to work on my voice other than use it a lot.
Okay.
And the one thing I know, when Nick sold out to Jerry, and I was Nick's commentator for 3.5 years, and when he sold out to Jerry, Jerry wanted me. That was the first thing that Jerry told me, and I'd met Jerry before, of course. And first thing he told me, he says, "I want you to stay and do things with us." He said, "I've got a commentary team that we'll use for the shows, but I'm going to need you." And he said, "Will you work with me?" And I said, "Absolutely. I love doing it." And it ain't about the money, and it's more about the love of the business and all that good stuff. Although, a lot of people complain about these promoters and their payoffs. I can honestly tell you, the only promoter that ever stiffed me was Burt Prentice, God rest his soul. But I'm not. But Nick and Jerry were good to me, and people ask me about the Hulk Hogan video. In fact, with the thing coming out on Netflix or whatever about Vince and all that stuff, they showed that video with my voice. And somebody asked me, they said they'd seen it. They said, "How much did you get paid for that?" They're thinking that I'm going to come up with some crazy figure. I said, $25. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and he said, "What have you made since then?" I said, "Nothing." I said, "I've made $25. And the guy was, he was like, "What do you mean? You've been viewed, this thing's been viewed, your voice has been heard all over the world millions of times, and you never got more than $25. I said, "Well, Jerry paid me $25 to do a 90-second voiceover in 1980, whatever." I said, "That was big money, and I appreciated it, and it helped pay a couple of bills. So I don't regret anything." It's fantastic. I appreciate that people still hear it and comment on it. But as far as the development of the voice, I think the longer you're behind the microphone, the more comfortable you get. Mm-hmm. And I think I was being the rock and roll DJ, 192, and all that kind of stuff. To being somebody that, just talk to people and enjoy doing that. And, all I can say is I'm blessed and I'm honored and actually flattered when somebody will say that.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome,
it's true.
Let's take a quick time out and get a word from one of my dope-ass sponsors, and we'll be right back with more Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
This year, Santa's bringing the power of Energizer into his workshop.
Whoa, the Energizer Bunny's got so much power.
Wait, he's powered up all the toys. I think that means we're done for the year.
I love this bunny.
He's the hardest working helper the North Pole has ever seen. And he wants all your gifts to have the power of the #1 longest lasting AA battery. So this holiday season, stock up on Santa's and the elves' favorite battery, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
Support for Live and in Color with Wolfie D is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped recently launched the Ultimate Men's Hygiene Bundle, the Performance Package. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code WOLFIE at manscaped.com. If my math's correct, that's about 8 million balls.
I got to jump in real quick with the hot tag, Jimmy. I'm taking it back. Michael, what do you think what is the coolest match you think you've ever called?
Oh, wow. There was one on TV that, in fact, Randy had on the Tuesday night show about a month or so ago that I remember. I remembered the match once I saw it, but I didn't remember my commentary between Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert and Jerry Lawler on TV. Title for the Southern title. And I listened to that, and in fact, he sent me a copy of it, and I watched it back. I must have been really fired. I'd obviously done my prep work, and I must have been really fired up that day, and my voice sounded good. It didn't crack, and I, now that's been. But the match I remember, and believe it or not, a lot of people make fun of it, and I know why. But I did a 60-minute Broadway between Harley Race and George Gulas at the Nashville Fairgrounds in 1978. Yeah. And Nick had brought Harley in for a shot in each town of the territory for a week. And he gave the shot to George in Nashville. And of course, that everybody was like, oh, this is, and it wasn't the greatest match of all times, but the way that Harley worked that match, it was the best match that George Gulas ever wrestled in my opinion.
Did he? Is this the one he said? Daddy said sail.
that came from and Daddy said sail. And the thing about Harley is Harley, of all the wrestlers I've ever worked with, in present company notwithstanding, because Wolfie, I think you're one tough son of a gun, but Harley Race was the toughest son of a gun. Even to Gypsy Joe's credit, I think Harley was just a little bit more.
That's what they say, man. Yeah, that's what they say.
He was just, and after that match, and I don't think a lot of people know what happened in the incident. Of course, it went Broadway, and during that match, people started out and they were booing George and cheering Harley, and Harley was healing as he always did. But as the match went on, and George got more and more into what he was doing, and Harley, of course, was calling it and leading him, people started turning in George's favor to that. At the end, when Harley screwed George from getting the title, people were pissed that, Harley, and all of a sudden they were all behind George Gulas, which is, he was always a polarizing person with the fans, not because of it being George, but I think more so of it being the promoter's son. Mm-hmm. And at the end, we're walking back to the dressing room, and there's two policemen, Harley, me, the timekeeper, and I want to say Jimmy was there from Chattanooga. And I remember the referee. He brought Bobby D in to be Chase D's dad in to be the referee that night. And we're walking back to the locker room, and people are throwing things and getting up in front of the cops. They're having to push them away, yelling at Harley, screaming. And all of a sudden, this little guy, about 5'5", in overalls, comes from the left side of Harley with a knife. He's got his switchblade out, and he comes at Harley. Shit. And Harley sees him coming, and the cops see him at the last second, and I'm behind him. And Harley Race took his right hand. Now, Harley was left-handed, took his right hand and caved that son of a gun's draw into the other side of his face. And the guy, he fell like a rock, just hit the floor. So we get back in the dressing room, and we crossed into the dressing room, and Nick is, what happened? What happened? What happened? Harley's explaining, and I saw and witnessed this with my very own eyes, the world heavyweight champion, the toughest of the tough, literally break down and shake like a baby to where he had to sit down in a chair. And I went and got him some water, and he was just, it all hit him as to what could have occurred once he got back in the back. And that incident probably of just about any that I've ever been involved with, still weighs heavily on my mind.
Wow, man, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy story. Yeah. They've said Harley is, I've heard stories, man. And unfortunately I never got to meet him. And I've just heard stuff, and I would have loved to have met him. Obviously I'd love to have wrestled him, man. But, that's crazy, man. They say he was such a tough guy, and and when I watched him wrestle, I'll be honest with you, man, as a kid watching him wrestle, I'm not going to say I was a hater or nothing, but I don't know. He just, when he came into WWF at the time and they were doing the King thing, it made me mad because I was a Memphis wrestling fan. And no, right, you're not the King. You know what I mean? As a kid, I get it now as a wrestler and an older person. But yeah, back then I was like, no, man, he's not the King. Law is the King.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, he was a gentleman in and out of the ring. I've heard some wildest and funniest stories about him, but I had the honor of doing that. And when Jerry and Jeff started TNA, NWA TNA back in 2002, they did it here in Huntsville at the Von Braun Center. Yep. And Harley was here. Harley was part of it, and I got to see him. And my son, who had his picture taken with Harley, he was 5 years old at the time, and Harley had the belt and held the belt in front of Chris, and I've got a beautiful shot of those two. And he was in town for the show. He was coaching down at Florida State at the time, and he came up for the show, and I took him back in the back, and Harley was there, and my son just absolutely, it was like a little kid meeting his childhood hero, and I think Harley got a big kick out of that. And we drove him back to the hotel, and he was just class act. And of all the world heavyweight champions, hey, Ric Flair was great. I've worked with Harley. The Funks were fabulous. I got to work with Dory Jr. and with Terry, and actually got to work with one time with Jack Briscoe very early on. Jack was pretty quiet. He was a different kind of champion, I guess. He wasn't as flamboyant or boisterous on the mic, because back in those days when the NWA and the guy in St. Louis, Sam Munchnick, he held a pretty tight reins on those guys. And that was the thing about working in radio in St. Louis. I was introduced and had lunch twice at a little meet and three over in Clayton, Missouri, where our radio station was, with Sam Munchnick. First time with a guy named Gene Donatovich, was the record rep from Columbia that introduced me to him. And the second time was Sam's son, who was a doctor in St. Louis. And Sam actually took me up to his condominium. He was living in Clayton. And it was, what a rat's nest looks like as far as you walk into somebody's house and Sam Munchnick, ultimate pack rat, and it was all about wrestling.
Yeah,
I spent about an hour with him one evening, and he was elderly at the time, but he was pulling out news clippings and showing me. I saw Pat O'Connor when he first started out, and his ring attire, and then I saw Luthez, and that was the other one I got to work with, was Luthez.
Oh, that's cool.
And he was one of the first people I did get to work with, and he's Hungarian. My dad, my father was Hungarian, and my father actually, we got to meet him one of the shows we were doing, and it was down here in Huntsville, and Dad got to meet him, and they talked for about 5 minutes in Hungarian to each other, which was really sort of cool. Yeah. But when you watch Luthez, and you watch some of the matches of Luthez, and he was I guess they would call him. Would you call him? I guess a shooter. Or he was a guy that I mean, he was just incredible. And I think Harley got a lot of what he did, especially in the pace that Harley did his matches or had his matches. And I think he got a lot of loose ends. I know Lou was involved with him early on. And I think that was good and good for the business. That's the one thing I really take offense to in the business in this day and time. And have had conversation with Jimmy Cornette and some other folks. But, you know, I think we're in a world right now where everything's at breakneck speed. And it takes time to develop a story. It takes time to tell a story. You don't read a book in 30 minutes. I mean, if you read a crime novel or a murder mystery or a horror book, you don't read it in 30 minutes. You may read it over the course of a week. And I think wrestling has lost its clock. I think lost its internal clock because everything happens right now. And,
you can get anything right now, like at the touch of a finger. You can get what you want right then.
Exactly. And I remember growing up in the radio business as a young programmer. I had a programmer, a consultant named Paul Drew, tell me one time. He said, I came up with this great idea and I threw it to him, and he was like, "Great idea." He said, "But Michael, let me ask you a question." He said, "What do you do for an encore when your first act is suicide?" And I went, "That's pretty deep." And so I think that's where the wrestling business has gone right now. They're to the edge of suicide by what quickly they do it. Now, as I say that, you turn around and you see an angle that was shot last Friday on SmackDown with the Usos and Roman Reigns, and I mean, that was just freaking textbook.
Yeah, man. And the thing is, they're making money, man. So you can't knock that. But I mean, there is a little thing of, some of it's going too fast. I feel like WWE is kind of took it back a little old school, and I really appreciate that. But there's just certain things, man, where it's like the AEW. I mean, I can't really watch that, and I don't watch a lot of current stuff. I do watch the pay-per-views on WWE, and I like I said, I think they're going back a little bit old school. They're still telling stories in the ring, which is great. But it's not what it used to be, but it's because, everything develops, I guess. It just, there's a whole new fan base, kids and whatnot. And I think it has to do with video games. I think it has to do with anime and all this kind of stuff that they see. And, so it makes a difference on wrestling, which wrestling has always evolved in that type of thing with pop culture.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely right. And, guys, I will say this. I learned a long time ago that the world is round, and that's a good thing because we're able to live on this planet. But the best thing is that life and fads and events all comes full circle at some point. Oh, yeah. It all comes full circle. And I think there'll come a time, and I think even in our business, in the wrestling business, I think there'll become a time at the right time, in the right place, that you're going to see a lot of throwback wrestling to the days of the 80s and maybe even the 70s when you guys, got familiar with the business. Yeah. And I think that happens. I think it will be the right time on earth for it to happen, and it will get to that. But you're right, Wolf and Jimmy, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. They're making money, and they're making money to the tune of money that has never been seen before to this magnitude in the business. So you can't argue or you can't tell them, you're doing this wrong. But for the integrity of the business and for the longevity of the business, I think it's got to get back to where you're telling a story. What was the Jerry Jarrett line? Personal issues sell tickets. Oh
yeah. You know what trips me out the most, man, while we're talking about this is that if you look at some of these pay-per-views, especially the overseas stuff, America, we're spoiled. We're brats. If you look at the crowds in the overseas stuff, they're with it the whole time, man. And the guys don't have to go out there and kill themselves. They can still do the old school shit. I mean, Cody and Gunther the other night was the beginning of it was, I mean, holds and stalling and shit like that. And it was like, okay, this is good. And they were still with it. They were having a good time, you know, over here in America, we're just spoiled. We're spoiled. That's what I think.
Well, and the other thing is and going back to that quote, when you see a high spot or you see something that people used to go, ooh, when they see it, you know, you see one of those in a match. You may see one of those in a week. Now you see one of them, and then 30 seconds later you see another one. And it really irritates me that a finishing move is a finishing move. That's why it's called a finish.
Right.
You know, you get that'll take a stunner or a guy that'll take a tombstone or something. They pop up like he's a freaking jack in the box.
Yeah.
And that just irritates the living, because I think more than anything that tells people this is not on the up and up.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to get my question in before I go back and tag Jimmy in. As an announcer, okay, so we've all got our favorites. Like, you're an Alabama guy, Jimmy's a Carolina guy, I'm a Memphis guy, Lance Russell's my guy. Who's your guy?
Well, I'm agree with you with Lance Russell. There never was anybody any better, and there never will be. But I actually will throw one in here that you guys probably have never heard of. And it was a guy that was on Nashville TV at Channel 8, black and white, back in the day with Nick Gulas, named Smiling Jack Simpson.
Oh,
and he had Gil Green. And the reason they called him Smiling Jack Simpson is he never smiled. But he would call a wrestling match like I or any announcer would call a baseball game or a football. He did play by play, hole by hole, move by move. And he'd get the selling points in between. You know, a guy'd get a side headlock and get a guy down on the mat. He'd be saying, okay, he's wretched. He's got it ratched in up under the chin and putting the pressure on. Boy, I'll tell you, this kind of action, you'll see it Tuesday night at the Hippodrome Arena, that main event, Len Rossi against Al Green. That's going to be a barn burner. You know, he would get those in while you were watching the match and getting into the play-by-play. He was selling them. And he was selling you in such a way that, by God, by the end of that match or by the end of that show, you know, you'd go to your mama or your daddy, or you'd go to the kids or your folks at the dormitory and say, hey, we got to be at the Hippodrome Tuesday night. That's going to be, you know, that's going to be a firefight. So
let me ask this. What do you think, makes a great announcer? I mean, okay, so Lance was always the guy that, man, he made it personal and he felt it and stuff like that. And then you go to Gordon Sully. He knew every move and carotid arteries and all this, you know what I'm saying? That type of thing. But then, like, what really makes, in your opinion, what really makes a great wrestling announcer? I mean, you had Jerry Lawler and JR. There was a good team. And, you know, Lawler, there was over the top with, you know, the puppies and all that kind of stuff. And Ross was the guy that knew the moves and stuff. But what really makes a great wrestling announcer, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, I'll give Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler were a great team. Don't get me wrong, but they were the junior team to Lance Russell and Dave Brown.
Yeah,
there you go.
I personally think that an announcer that keeps your attention and keeps you on the edge of your seat about what you're seeing. You're seeing something. He's telling you what you're seeing. Yeah. That sounds easy, and it's not. But I think somebody that can keep your attention and keep you excited about what you're seeing is a good announcer. That being said, I give a lot of kudos to Jim Ross, as he is today on AEW. God bless him. Is not the announcer that we loved and lived with WWE and WWF, and before that, even with the Bill Watts and those guys. I watch and hear Tony Schiavone, and I'm not a Tony Schiavone fan because I think Tony Schiavone is, if you've heard him once, you've heard him 1,000 times. He doesn't, you know, and I'm not saying he doesn't have knowledge of the wrestling business, and I'm not saying that obviously he has, you know, the attention of promoters for whatever reason. I think had a lot of help being the guy out of the Carolinas and the guy out of the Georgia Championship, and that helped him along. But to me, Tony Schiavone is not the quintessential wrestling announcer.
Yeah.
Lance Russell, Dave Brown. There was a guy in Missouri named Larry Matzik, and I got to know Larry, and he did the matches for Sam, and I always felt Larry did a really, really good job. I learned to appreciate Mark Lawrence after that, and what because
Jimmy
I understood. I understood what the Von Erichs wanted out of an announcer, and a lot of announcers, I think, you can't judge them only because they're doing what the promoter is asking them to do. And a lot of times, not a pure announcer. You know, I'm a sports guy from other realms of sports that came in and did wrestling. Yeah. But there were a lot of announcers that only did wrestling and only did what the announcer told, or what the promoter or matchmaker told them to do. Yeah. So I think there's two fields of thought, two levels of thought there.
Yeah, that's a great answer, man. Very great answer. And one more time before I hand it over to Jimmy. I'd like to know, man, you've called a lot of my matches. You have called a lot of my stuff. What do you think, as far as like my matches, what was your favorite that you saw me do?
Well, I think you and Wolfie, you and Jamie, to me, was the perfect marriage in a young tag team that really captivated young fans and got a whole new. You were the rap stars coming out of a rock era, and you sort of blazed your own trail. And I always liked y'all's double teams, whether the hubcap was involved, whatever the case may be. Y'all always came up with clever things to do, bouncing off somebody's tops of their shoulders and onto the opponent. And so, I mean, you guys did stuff that had never been seen before, and you made it exciting. And when you're calling a match and you see something, you know, you let your emotions. I've always, whether I'm calling a high school playoff game Friday night in high school football, and I will call it as if I'm calling the 7th game of the World Series. And I always try to do that in wrestling matches as well. And if I see something that just blows my mind, I don't care if the opponent does it or the home team does it. I'm going to let it be known. And I think the thing that you guys gave a great visual to allow for good play-by-play. And if there's something that you guys will always be remembered in my mind for, that's what that is.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so, you know, you were kind of talking about it earlier. And by the way, my guy is Bob Caudle. So I was not a Tony Schiavone guy either. I felt like Tony snuck in and took Bob's spot. And also JR then came in and all that. But I'm a Bob Caudle guy. I love Lance. And I think Lance, arguably, I would say that Lance is the best. But Bob is my guy. It's like a bowl of chicken noodle soup when you're sick, man. It just makes me feel good when I hear his voice. But class man, met him before. Nice fella. Yeah. So I want to go back to something you brought up earlier, and most of our listeners always want to hear stories about this. And what's weird is when we spoke to Jamie about this, he didn't remember you being on there because Kevin actually asked him. He says, was Michael St. John ever on the USWA bus trips? And Jamie was like, no, he didn't come on, you know, that kind of stuff. But you say that you were, so I would love to hear some kind of bus story if you have one.
Well, the two things that come to mind, and yes, I was, of course, you know, the way they did that, the show would be over in the Sportatorium by 10 o'clock. It very rarely ran late. And of course, we were taping for ESPN, so they were on a schedule as well. But the boys would, one week they'd pick up the heels would leave on the bus, and the bus would leave the Sportatorium. And the fans would dwindle out, and then about 45 minutes later, they'd go over to Denny's and drop off the heels, and they'd be having also something to eat. They'd circle back around in about 45 minutes to an hour and come to the back side of the building and pick up the baby faces. And then the next week it'd be. So that was always that was always sort of unique. But every time I was on the bus, two things. Number one, the boys would take real good care of me. Danny would be on the bus. Austin would be on the bus. But they had a little sign that made that somebody wrote out a little handmade sign that said, "Do not disturb." And I'd try to get in the bunk and go to sleep because I'd have to do the TV the next day from Memphis in some capacity. And so they gave me the top bunk in the very back of the bus. If there was any noise going on up front, they didn't, it didn't disturb the announcer. And I can remember, I forget who said it one time, said, "Shut the fuck up. Let St. John sleep. He's got to put us over tomorrow." And I never had a moment's problem ever with anybody. But I can remember every night, overnight, that drive from Dallas to Memphis was overnight. We'd get to Channel 5 at about 7:30, 8 o'clock the next morning. And we would stop. The bus would make us stop for refueling in Texarkana. And it would be about 4 o'clock in the morning, and 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'd get off the bus to go to the bathroom. And Tojo would always say, "Mr. St. John, give me some cracklings." And I would always buy him a bag of cracklings. He loved pork skins at 4:30. And he'd always try to pay me. And I said, "No, don't bag of pork skins, for goodness sake." But I was always very fond of that. And, just hearing the boys talk and it was a fun ride. A lot of times the boys would be exhausted, and a lot of times they'd still have that adrenaline pumping. So it was always interesting. One night though, that there was an incident.
Did you know? I woke up. Did you know that Jamie usually had a pound of weed under the car, under the bus?
Oh, of course. But and to each his own. I mean, that's But one night, woke up and I knew we weren't in Texarkana because it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and the bus was stopped. We were on the side of the road, and I'm like, "Oh Jesus!" We broke down. It was getting warm inside the bus, and the bus driver was out. And I looked out the window, and there's two state trooper cars, and the bus driver's out there talking. I'm like, "Well, what do we do? Do we have a wreck? What's going on?" And what had happened was one wrong way driver coming down I-30 and nearly hit us. So the bus had to swerve to miss him, and he would have wiped us all out had he hit us because he was 50 miles an hour. And the boys that were on that bus, I remember after that getting back on the road, and everybody was wide awake, I think, the rest of the trip because we were also traumatized by what almost happened. So that's probably one you won't hear about or see
no doubt
much, but and back in those days, Steve Austin was on the bus, and the lady that was Chris Adams' wife, she was riding them, and Jackie, Miss Texas, who you talk about another one that is a tough son of a gun.
Oh,
that's
Lord.
the toughest I've ever met. And the nicest lady. She was incredible. But those bus rides, I'll be honest with you guys, I wish I had better stories, but the majority of that sleep.
Yeah. No, that was a great story, though, and one that nobody will ever know, unless you told it. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Danny Davis and I shared that story at the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame event in Jackson a month or so ago. He remembered that night, and I don't think anybody that was on that bus will ever forget that night, but it was a traumatizing experience.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, thank you so much for being on with us today, Michael.
Yeah,
we greatly appreciate it.
Awesome, man. I'm glad we got to hook this interview up. Seriously,
well, guys,
I feel connected now. We're 2024 Memphis Hall of Fame people together.
Well, and my kudos to Randy and the folks that put that together, Kevin and everybody. I thought they did a marvelous job, and I think the person in our group that enjoyed it the most was my grandson Joshua. I got that plaque, cool. And after stage, and I went over and showed it to him. He took the plaque and held it in his hand, and I think I saw the plaque 2 days later. But
that's awesome.
He was blown by meeting all of you guys, and I've shown him, he had seen some of the films on YouTube and stuff I'd shown him before, but now he'll actually ask me, he'll say, "Papa, show me a show me a wrestling match that you were talking at, and then I'll pull something up and we'll watch it. I'll sling it up on the big TV and we'll watch it. But, I got to say before we close, and with much due respect I have a lot of respect from the bottom of my heart to each and everybody that ever stepped foot in that ring. And I don't think the normal wrestling match or the wrestling show attendee will ever understand or ever comprehend the work, the exercise, the shape that you guys have to remain in, especially back in the day when you guys were rolling down the highway 6 and 7 days a week and 7 shows a week. I mean, and to do what you did and how you did it, and to keep those fans satisfied and happy and coming back, I think it's a testament to the sport of professional wrestling. And I don't know if there's any other sport, period, that can even hold a candle to that, including basketball. People say, well, basketball, they play 2 or 3 games a week and they run up the court 60 minutes. Yeah, but they run up the court and they throw a ball into a hoop for 60 minutes. They don't beat it up and fall on the floor and come off the top rope and get their head slammed with air and stuff like that. So I have a deep, deep respect for all of you guys. And for the fans, I have a deeper respect for buying into something that, yes, is entertaining, but also is a sport and an athletic event. And I don't care if it's a work or it's a shoot. It still holds a very high prominence in my mind and in my heart, and I'll never lose that.
Yeah. Awesome. And the thing is, man, it's like, it is a work, and we kind of know what's coming. We don't have pads on. Football, they got pads. I always say that. They got pads on. They may not see the collision coming, and to take nothing away from them, because I love football, and I love some of those athletes are some of my people that I respect the most, man. But wrestling is just a different thing. It's an art form, and it's also a dance, but it's also, like you said, man, it's not easy, man. And I was just telling, I went to the doctor today because my shoulder's messed up, but I messed it up in '97 on a wrestling move, and it has never been the same since. And it's just it's hard to do out there, man. We can do the best we can do, and the thing is, we were saying something earlier, man. The shelf life of the guys these days is not as long as the guys in my day, and especially the guys before me, man. Look at Ricky Morton. He's still going. I mean, they know what to do, when to do it, why to do it, all that kind of stuff, man. You got to save yourself. Some of these guys, the bar has been raised so high, and I'm not going to say that I didn't do stuff that was like, I probably shouldn't do this, but whatever. You know what I mean? But the bar has been raised so high now where the shelf life of a wrestler is not that long anymore. And it just makes me think, man, I think it needs to be lowered. And let's go back to that old school storytelling, like I was saying about WWE, I think is doing. I mean, yeah, let's do the big moves here and there, but make it mean something, man, because these guys are on these indie shows are doing shit that's like stupid, like absolutely stupid, and you're not going to make it. I mean, yeah, you'll go viral, but you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
Well, going viral, that means you have what used to be 15 minutes of fame, now 15 seconds of fame.
Right.
So
exactly.
That takes on a whole new thing. Guys, I want to thank you for allowing me to be. Anytime you want me on, I'd be honored to do it. Wolfie, love you like a brother. Always love doing promos with you. You and Jamie,
thank you.
You guys always provided a lot of fun for me and a lot of entertainment. And I'd go back and do it again right now, without a doubt. But
me too, man.
Thank you for what you're doing, because I think what you're doing now is you're keeping the dream of professional wrestling alive for a lot of people, young and old, and just continued success. And anytime you want me around, just give me a yell.
Yeah, man. Thank you, man. And I don't know what else to say, man. Jimmy, you got anything in closing?
No, just thank you, sir. And, we greatly appreciate you. We'll talk to you next time, buddy.
Yes, sir.
We'll
be right back with Ask Wolfie D anything. Thank you, Michael St. John.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hey, DJ, hit that music. All right, we are back with Ask Wolfie D Anything. And first off, like we always say, man, Michael St. John, what a great interview.
We always come back with, man, that was awesome.
I mean, yeah.
But it was. I mean, and our interviews are fun.
I think
they
so
really
too.
are, man. I really feel like our show's different, man. We just have a different way of doing things, and I don't know. I guess I'm tooting my own horn and yours at the same time. You know, not that I'm jerking you off or anything, but yeah, that sounded weird. But man, we do good. I love our show, man.
I do too.
I appreciate the people that come on here, and I appreciate the listeners. But yeah, Michael St. John, what a good story.
Yeah, man. Super good story. Super good guy. You know, resembles Alex Trebek a little bit, I noticed in real life. And, you know, just a good dude. And what a great voice, man. So, first, you know, got to thank you, Michael.
And I'm losing mine. I apologize.
Well, you're dealing with some injuries right now. So but anyway, if you got time for some questions, man, we've got some good ones that have come in and very, very happy. So, yeah, let's do it. All right. The first one is from Mac A. Ronan on Instagram. He says this. He says, thank you, guys. The show has been awesome lately. When it comes to wrestling podcasts, I only listen to 2, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, and one who is hosted by a guy who's got a good friend named Weasel Dooley. Okay.
Okay.
That being said, I have a question for Wolfie. So this is interesting.
Well, I hope it is, because it's Ask Wolfie.
I know, right? So he says, what is one question that nobody has asked on the show, but you wish someone would? Thanks again. Huh.
Okay. There's, oh my God. I mean, I could go a lot of places with this. What is one question that nobody's asked that I wish they would?
Here, I've got one real quick while you're thinking. Okay, here's one real quick. Hey, we have a lot of money for you guys. We love your show. We want to buy it.
Yes.
That's one we've never been asked.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's the answer. Can you buy my show? Pay me a little bit.
Finance it, baby. How about that? Help us out.
How big is Batista's dick? I don't know. You know, some of these things.
You didn't even get
those have been asked. That one's been asked, yeah. How big's my dick?
Just look at the picture of him at Myrtle Beach and you'll get a decent idea. And then, we'll go from there. But no, I mean, you know, maybe not on the dick questions. We don't need to know about him. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
no more big questions.
with Batista, you didn't even get a side, like a peripheral glance, right? You're saying
no idea. And honestly, I don't think it's a thing. I really don't. I don't know. I mean, it is a thing, but it's not a thing. I don't know.
I mean, guys who wear pearls, right?
I mean, they call it a thing, right?
Yeah.
But what is a question that I've never been asked is hard for me to answer because I've never been asked it.
Yeah. Maybe this one question, what is the one question you've never been asked? And that is the question we've never been asked.
Exactly.
I don't know, man. But yeah. So, okay. Well, I think that was a good answer. Batista or give us money. How about that? So, but seriously, Mac A. Ronan, he is like one of our biggest supporters on Instagram. Dude, you're awesome. Thank you, brother. You're the best, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. The next question is from a listener named Chris Kearney on Facebook. And he asked, this is a good question, actually. I like this one. It's simple, but I like it. And his answer, I don't know about, though. Best wrestling face paint. And he says Danhausen is number 1. Now, before you start, because I want you to answer this.
Before you start.
because I know you're going to answer it. I do think Danhausen's paint is good, right? I do. It's very good, very evil, all that. It's actually, I love the fact that he acts like it's just the red part is the makeup, because he'll be like, oh, yes, the red part, whatever. I can't really do a Danhausen impersonation, but, the black and the white he's saying is his regular face, and then the red part of it is his makeup. But anyway, go ahead, answer it. I want to hear your answer.
Honestly, my favorites, right?
Of course.
It's, the Road Warriors. That was, I think, pretty much one of the first people that did that. And just their, especially Animal. And Hawk's my favorite out of both of them.
Right.
But Animals was pretty intricate,
Yeah.
Little spider on the face and all that kind of stuff. But also Muda.
Oh, Muda.
Muda was cool as shit.
Sting had some cool stuff too for a while, man. I think it got a little boring.
Yeah, the beach Sting. Right?
Oh, dude. Yeah, totally. That's the one I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, the beach Sting. But see, beach Sting, to me, as a kid, stole off the Road Warriors. Anybody that painted their face after the Road Warriors was copying to me.
Right.
So, yeah. The Road Warriors, Ultimate Warriors was cool.
But then
again,
yeah,
it felt like a steal to me.
Right.
Sting's Crow stuff was good, but that's a double steal.
That's a double steal, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. They always called him a brother in paint. It was like something they really. But it really originated with them ripping it from the Road Warriors, because Sting first painted his face in the Blade Runners, right? And or the Eagle, American, whatever that one American tag. I don't know if that was Team USA or whatever he was, or I think it was the Blade Runners were first. And he started doing the face paint. Now, it was not like the Road Warriors, but it definitely developed in. But there's some face paint that he did, especially during the time he was in Hot Stuff International Incorporated. It was like single color, but he had a lot of good lines. It was very good. But Animal, I think, was the most consistent overall. Muda and Kabuki, they were great. But okay,
also you got to go back to, not a real intricate, like colorful thing, but Missing Link.
It was great.
A green face with some black on his eyes.
Yeah.
But that was different. I'm trying to think, man.
So
who else back then?
Demolition, of course, another Powers of Pain. Powers of Pain ripoff.
I so loved Bill Eadie as the Masked Superstar.
Oh man,
more than I loved him as Demolition.
I agree. I agree.
Say it to his face. I swear to God, I would.
Well, maybe we can get him on the show sometime, since everybody else has had him. But anyway,
let me say this.
Yeah, of course.
About something else real quick. You ever notice, as the Masked Superstar, you remember the sit-out clothesline?
Oh, yeah, totally.
He never did that in Demolition.
No, he never.
Do you think he did that on purpose?
I do. Yeah, I would like to ask him that. Who's got Bill Eadie's number? We'll get that. One question I do want to ask you about makeup is this, okay? So Hawk had two distinct styles, right? Obviously, I'm not talking about early Road Warriors. I'm talking about once they started doing the studded collars and looking alike and everything. Hawk had that hawk-like painting on his face. You know what I'm saying? It was like a hawk. And then there was the red and the black around the eye and the red triangle kind of thing. Which was your favorite on Hawk?
I'm trying to think what you're talking about. For me, Hawk had under one eye was the the long kind of apostrophe looking gimmick.
Yeah.
And on the other eye was the swirly hurricane looking gimmick.
I'm going to send you this picture right here of the. You'll know what I'm talking about when you see it.
But then he also did back in the day. He had the kind of like the animal thing, like with both eyes.
Right. Look at they called it a hawk, like he was painting a bird on his face. I just texted it to you.
Hang on. I'm looking. Hang on. Yeah, that. I mean, that's more animal looking to me.
You're right. I agree. I like the other one better.
I love those shoulder pads the best.
Oh, dude.
Not the red.
Not the red. Exactly.
No, the black and the silver spikes. That was the Road Warriors, not the Legion of Doom.
Right.
That was the Road Warriors, bro.
Yeah. And here's my thought on it. I actually like just before the shoulder pads too, though. I love the shoulder pads, especially the black ones, NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions. But I really like the vest and the collar too look. But yeah, when they got those shoulder pads, bro, it put it over the edge, man. That was the best. Yeah. Absolutely. Love that. Yeah, but anyway, I agree with you, man. I think we're saying this, but honestly, the Road Warriors, right? That's the best paint.
I think so, man. They're just, when you think of that, and it started a trend. You know what I mean? It
did.
And I've said this too, man. Okay, so the Ultimate Warrior and his, armbands on the biceps, right?
Yeah.
That is now the girls with the little thing around their butts or whatever.
Yeah.
The string around their butts to make their butts perk up.
Right.
It's the new Ultimate Warrior bicep thing.
I've never thought of that, but that's so true, man.
It is, man.
Yeah.
They all got it. They're all doing it now. They're all doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you wore a little eyeliner, probably a slash, right? But you never really wore makeup though. Did you ever think about wearing makeup with Slash?
Other than the eyeliner, no.
Okay.
I wanted to tattoo my head and my face. I'm glad I didn't do that. Like a Mike Tyson sort of deal. But I did want to do that. But yeah, I'd like to wear eyeliner every day if people wouldn't think I was weird. But
yeah. I mean, Johnny Depp, J.D. Vance. No, I'm just kidding. J.D. Vance. He does kind of look like it. I don't think he does either. I just think he has
like nice eyes or something.
Nice eyes. Okay, so that's the makeup question. Unless you have one more person you'd like to say. I can't think of anyone.
No, I really can't, man. Muda, the Road Warriors, Missing Link.
Yeah.
Kabuki kind of had some stuff back in the day, but I really can't remember anybody else. I'm sure somebody listening is going to go, Wolfie, how can you forget blah, blah, blah. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Chris Colt, I can't tell if those were like bruises. Chris Colt was kind of like the original Jamie Dundee, except that he was gay, and I don't think Jamie is that. So, but he
I promise. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I don't know what I just said.
No, it's not. Come on. Anyway, so that he's not. I know better than anybody probably that he's not. But anyway, long story short.
Right now. Anyway, let's go on.
All right. The next question. Okay. So the next question is, this is a good
bisexual. Let's call it bi.
Try anything.
If you don't.
Okay, at Wizardry. Okay, the next question is from at Wizardry Video on YouTube, and he says this. He goes, "Did kayfabe even exist during the 90s in Memphis? How did fans react when the King went from being a babyface to showing up on WWE television as a heel?" That's just the King rule, right?
Yeah, kayfabe was, I mean, it was totally a thing in the 90s. As far as Lawler and how the fans react, hell, I don't know. You know what I mean? I mean, that's not something I can really depict. I wasn't he's asking about the fans. I was a wrestling fan, but how can I, speak for them?
I think it's just the King law. Like, it's basically, he's going to always, it's like Bret in Canada. Bret Hart in Canada was always going to get over. I think you put the King in Memphis, he's always a good guy, especially after a point, right? Don't you think?
Yeah. But I mean, I've seen a ton of matches where, one of my favorite things I told you about, and the listeners, one of my favorite things was, Randy Savage versus Lawler at the Coliseum, man. And, Lawler was the babyface, but he started doing those jabs, boom, boom, boom. He pulled the strap, and the people popped like hell, man. Like, they're like, here we go.
Yeah.
And then he took the Flair face bump, and they went, oh, it was the greatest reaction I had ever seen from a crowd, man. It was so cool. So cool. Because I swear to God, it was packed, and they were like, it really sounded like that.
Yeah.
And during the match, he kind of turned into the heel.
Right.
He kind of turned into the heel because Randy was so over.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so back to the original question. Give it to me again.
Did kayfabe exist in the 90s? Because they're questioning.
Okay. Yeah. So kayfabe in the 90s, yes, absolutely 100%. I can't tell you how many times I was dropped off, a block or 2 blocks away from the building because, I was riding with my enemy or just somebody that was a heel.
Yeah.
Or I ducked in the floorboard before we pulled up, or shit like that, man. And you couldn't go out with, even though your best friends might have been a heel or something, don't get caught at the bar with them.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
It was just a thing, man. You get fired.
Yeah.
And that was the early 90s, man.
Yeah.
And, you just didn't do it.
Yeah. Didn't exist. I mean, it did exist. Definitely existed. So
yeah. Kayfabe was real, man.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hey, that's all I got, brother. Kayfabe is real.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to the listeners. My voice is going bad. It's just kind of a little sickness I'm coming up on and then also my shoulder and all that. So I'm taking a few pain pills for that before I think surgery is coming up. But anyway,
legally prescribed, by the way. We're not dabbling in but if
we don't do that,
Wolfie, you've been a champ this whole show.
My blood work is awesome. So.
I did, man. Congrats, bro. That's awesome. You're doing
30
awesome.
pounds, 30 plus pounds down, and blood work is awesome. So,
dude, that's awesome, man. Good for you, buddy. I need to follow your lead, brother. So, but yeah. All right, let's do it. But yeah, man, I just thank you, Michael St. John. Thank you, Wolfie. You got through this whole show from intro to ending. Maybe medicated. We'll just go with that. But you did good, brother. So thank you. And we will. Who we got next, man? Do we want to?
Great interview with Michael, man. Seriously, that was awesome to me. Learning his background was awesome, man. And damn, I should have been nicer to him. But anyway,
he likes you.
Next week is going to be a good one.
Let's just say this. I think for the next several weeks, we're going to have some excellent shows. Yeah, I don't really want to go into them yet because we don't want to jinx anything. But yes, y'all stay buckled.
And I'll just go, I done told you this, and I'll say it to the listeners. Next week, I'm going to lose friends over it. I'm going to lose friends over next week.
Okay.
But we lost friends over the Chase Stevens episode. So
right.
It just shows how weird people are, but whatever.
The business is the business, right? Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. Cream of the crop, right? But next week I'm going to lose some friends, but you're going to get to hear his perspective. And I think that's important,
I do too. I'm excited, and it'll be good. We're not naming his name yet, but you'll see it very soon. Coming soon on @LiveWolfieD on all social media platforms. So make sure you follow, subscribe, like. Seriously, y'all, tell a friend about us. I mean, that is right now that we have a great amount of listeners, and we thank you all, each one immensely. But tell a buddy. If you got a buddy that is like somebody that likes wrestling, we're not just a Memphis podcast. That might be something that we're very heavily involved in Memphis, but we're not just a Memphis podcast. We've got guests from all over. So buckle in, y'all. That's all I'm about to say. So
yeah, man. That's awesome. That's a great close, man. I'm not going to try to top it. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Michael St. John, and tune in next week while I lose friends.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Chic, Jared, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all, and all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com, and to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to USWApodcast.com.
That's right, it's the talk of Middle Tennessee, the channel you love to hate and the channel you hate to love. It's Brian Turner from Brian Turner's VHS Rehab. And if you're looking for matches from Wolfie D to Jerry Lawler to Dusty Rhodes and the team that put a pimp before your eyes and a goatee between your thighs, Booty Call and Athena, go to lostwrestling.com. See, I made it easy for you. Brian Turner's VHS Rehab. Booyah!
Hi, this is Mike Needham, host of the Reckless Abandon podcast with Mike Needham. We invite you to jump on your favorite podcast platform and search for the Reckless Abandon podcast and give us a listen. I'm sometimes joined by a part-time podcaster, part-time co-host, and full-time wife, Tiffany Nicole. We talk wrestling, we talk pop culture, we talk local events, local happenings in West Tennessee, and a ton of other stuff. But be sure to check out the Reckless Abandon podcast. Find us on Facebook. Also, look up the Microgroup Podcasting family on Facebook and see some of our other podcasts we have out there. Until next time, make good choices and always remember, no dollar, no dice.
So that was another great episode. Hey, Wolfie, tell them where they can find you on social media.
Jimmy, they can find me in the club, bottle full of bub. I'm just kidding. They can find me on Facebook. My personal page is Warren Wolf, WLFE. I'm on Instagram, at WarrenWolf13.
You can always find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, at Live Wolfie D. Here's the thing. Wolfie always has offers for his autographed photos. He has a selection of some awesome photos from throughout his career that he will autograph and personalize any way that you want him to. Just contact him either directly at his personal Facebook page or through any one of our other pages, and we'll make sure you get in contact directly with Wolfie. Get those photos, right, Wolfie?
Yeah, I've got some good stuff on there, to help with the podcast.
Folks, if you can't get out to a show to meet Wolfie D, there's nothing like that, especially for the fans of PG-13 and Wolfie D. And before we go, you can always find me, your host, Jimmy Street, at James Rock Street on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
And hey, Jimmy, before we go real quick, I just want to add in there, from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate, first of all, the work you've done for this podcast. You have worked your butt off. Secondly, the people that are liking the page. Beyond that, even more, is the people that are listening, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah, and remember, guys, the podcast drops a new episode every Monday at noon, and our past episodes are streaming now on demand on all major podcast formats. Thanks again.
I got a cap for you don't. He got a cap for you don't. I got a cap for you don't. He got a cap for you don't. He got a cap for you don't. And here we go. The original white boy that came out sagging, not bragging, don't be hating, cause I'm spitting the truth. Still livin' in color. Bum rush your mother, utilize a hubcap unlike any other. Back in the day, I was N-O-D, and I was P to the G, plus the 1 and the 3. In case you forgot, they call me Wolfie D. Been cloned and copied so many times, tired of suckers taking credit for what is mine. You know who you are, without me name dropping. Wrestling's first white boy coming out hip-hopping. Been doing it like this since 92. Laid low for a while, and you thought I was through. Listen real close to these rhymes that I've injected. This shit's so sick, it makes your ears get infected. Mad skills, no faking, there is no one great. Cause I'm bringing more folks than Obi-Wan or Vader. Not here to play games, so you better beware. You don't like me, so what? I really don't care. Like time I keep ticking and I can't be stopped. You sucker step to the side unless you wanna get dropped. With my finish, I'll straight knock you out. Please allow me to tell you what it's all about. I'm gonna wind it up, then I'm driving it home. It's Wolfie D, baby. Huh. I got a cap for your dome. I got a cap for your dome. We got a cap for your dome. We got a cap for your dome.
This has been a James Rock Street production.